Okay, let me ask you something. How many hours did you spend last week on work that did not put a single dollar into your business? Reconciling the books, chasing down where your onboarding fell apart, trying to make sense of a report, writing the same 5 emails that you write every single time somebody new comes into your business. Now imagine most of that handled, and you get all of those hours back to do the coaching, the client work, the making, the selling, the thing that you started this business to do. That is available to you right now. But there is one condition, and it is a big one. Welcome back to Small Business Simplified. I'm Karin Velez, your business big sister. And about 2 weeks ago on this show, we talked about burnout and what it looks like when you have been running on fumes since January. Last week, we got into decision fatigue and why the sheer number of small choices that you make in a day is draining you probably more than the big ones. Today, we're going after the thing that creates a lot of both, which is the pile of very necessary work sitting between you and the work that actually pays you. And we're going to talk about AI. And I know a lot of you just tensed up. Stay with me because I'm not here to tell you to slap a chatbot onto your website or to churn out 100 social media posts a week using AI, okay? I have two very strong opinions about AI in a tiny business, and they actually kind of pull in opposite directions, but that's sort of on purpose. The first one is that AI can take an enormous amount of non-revenue work off your plate. And for a solopreneur or somebody who's running a very tiny team, that is genuinely life-changing. The second is that you should have a working idea of what the finished thing should look like before you ask AI to make it for you. So that first belief gives you your time back. But that second one keeps you from handing your reputation over to a tool that has no idea whether it got it right. Let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to talk about the environmental or societal ramifications of AI use in this episode, but trust me, it's something I have given a lot of thought to. And, there are ways that we can and should mitigate those things, but that is a whole other episode in itself. I'm not even sure that it's one that I would do, but just know that it's not something that I haven't considered. What we're talking about here today is productivity, okay? AI is at its best when it does the work that never made you any money directly, and it is only safe when you can tell whether the work that came back is any good. So part one of that is the opportunity, and I'm going to give you 5 different systems that are worth your setup time. And part two is the guardrail. And that's the part that I don't hear a lot of people talking about when they talk about all of the things that AI can do. So let me set the bar first because I think a lot of the AI conversation aimed at small business owners can be kind of insulting, right? Write my captions for me, or draft a reply to this email, or give me 30 content ideas. And if that's where you are, that's fine. Start there. But I'm betting that a lot of you listening to this have been using these tools for probably the last year or more, and you are very well past that. And honestly, AI itself is very well past that. Those are one-off favors. I actually did a workshop within the Growth Table Small Business Collective over a year ago that talked about using AI as your personal assistant. And I will tell you, I'm actually getting ready to take that workshop replay down because it is so outdated and it's only been a year. Okay. So those little tiny tasks, yeah, they're great, but they save you like 4 minutes. Okay. They do not change what's happening across your entire week in your business. What does change your week is a system. You know, I am a systems girl, so of course that's where we're going with this, right? Something that you set up once with real thought over maybe 2 or 3 focused hours of work, and then you run it over and over again on a schedule. That changes your week on an ongoing basis. The setup takes effort. Yes, that's the trade-off. But you are spending concentrated time now so that a recurring drain on your weekly calendar mostly goes away, other than some oversight. In almost every case, the setup comes down to three things. You gather the context, meaning the documents and the numbers and the history that the tool needs to know about your business, right? Then you write a standing instruction, which is a detailed prompt that you save and reuse over and over again rather than retyping or reinventing it every time. And then you define the output format. So the thing that comes back is the same thing every single time. It looks the same, it acts the same, right? So context, standing instruction, output format. Thankfully, none of this requires a developer. If you can use a chat interface and upload a file, you can build every one of these systems that I'm about to talk about. And the first system is a monthly money review. I am really big on having a weekly and monthly money moment in your business. It is so, so important to know your numbers inside and out, especially when your margins aren't really big. A lot of solopreneurs look at their numbers like once a quarter, and then they might feel vaguely sick and just close the laptop because, hey, the bills are getting paid and that's all I need to know. The reports that break everything down in your business, so what's coming in and from where and when and what's going out and what should be changed, those all exist. The reading of the reports is what doesn't ever seem to happen, because reading them and understanding them really well and knowing what to do with that information takes a skill that most of us just kind of picked up sideways or we didn't pick up at all. So every month, export three things out of your bookkeeping software: your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and a transaction detail report, and pull those down as a CSV file. Now, if you're tracking these things manually, then track those things within a spreadsheet and save them as a CSV, right? Then you upload those into your preferred AI tool with a standing instruction that you're just going to write one time and save and reuse over and over again. So that instruction should tell the AI tool who you are, what your business does, what your offers or products are and what they cost, what your typical fixed monthly expenses are, and what you consider to be a healthy margin. Then that same instruction tells the tool exactly what you want back. So you might tell it, compare this month to the same month last year and to last month, right? Flag any expense category that moved more than 15%. Calculate revenue by offer and gross margin on each one. Identify the three expenses that I should be questioning. Tell me my current cash runway based on average monthly outflow. List anything that looks like a duplicate charge or a subscription that I may have forgotten. Give all this to me in plain language with the numbers displayed. So listen to what you're telling it to do in all of those things that I just said. You're not asking it to do your bookkeeping. Your bookkeeper, or you and your software, still does the actual bookkeeping. You are asking it to be the analyst that you probably don't want to have to pay for anyway. And if you're lucky, maybe it'll find the $70 a month tool that you stopped using back in February, but you're still paying for. And if I sound like I'm speaking from experience, I am. The tool can pinpoint where there might be a bump in the road in your cash flow coming up, or where your cost of doing business is slowly creeping. All things that can save you money, and now it's automated, so it's saving you precious time too. So the setup time on this is only about 2 hours in that first month, getting everything set up, and that's mostly writing that standing instruction. After that, this is a 15-minute task once a month, and you have so much valuable information about your business finances right at your fingertips, and that allows you to make real informed decisions. So the second system you could set up would be a process audit. Every tiny business has processes that live entirely in the owner's head. And I'll bet you're shaking your head up and down right now because you know it's true. You know the steps because you invented them. Nothing is written down, so nothing can be handed off or improved, and there's nobody else to troubleshoot it when it breaks. So the build with this one starts with just talking. Open a voice memo or your phone's dictation. I love Whisper Flow for this. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. And narrate within that one process start to finish, exactly the way that you do it, including the parts that you might be embarrassed about. It's okay if it's messy, right? In fact, it's even more important to do this if the process is messy. So, basically it's like, okay, a client says this, and then I do this, and then I wait for that, and then I usually forget this part, and I remember 3 days later, whatever. Do it messy, okay? 10 minutes of rambling about whatever this process is okay. Then you hand that transcript to AI and you ask it to map the process into numbered steps with decision points. And then you ask it to do 4 specific things. Identify every step where the process stops and waits on you personally to do something. Identify every step where information gets re-entered by hand somewhere else. Identify anywhere a customer or a client could fall through the cracks and nobody would really notice. And name the 3 changes that would save the most time relative to how hard those changes are to make. After you get all that back, do some editing to be sure that the process fits, and then have it write the clean version as a standard operating procedure, an SOP, that you can save and follow and eventually hand off to a contractor or to an employee. Do this for your 3 or 4 most repeated processes, and you will have documentation that you have probably been meaning to create since you started this whole journey. I cannot stress how important it is to take the time to set up SOPs in your business, and AI now makes this process super straightforward. The setup on this one is probably about an hour per process, and then it's done. And now nothing is falling through the cracks. There's a system to follow each and every time, and someone else can do the job when you're ready for that step. So you are no longer the bottleneck. The process is out of your head and onto paper, so to speak. The third system that you could set up would be a client onboarding engine. So onboarding is where a lot of small businesses kind of lose the goodwill that they worked so hard to earn with a new client. So you've done all of this work, and then somebody says yes, and then maybe they hear nothing from you for a few days because you're scrambling to try to remember what it is that you're supposed to send them first. So this build is to give AI everything that it needs to know about your business in one place. So your services and what's included, or your product and the pricing, right? Your terms, your timeline, your policies, your frequently asked questions, and then 2 or 3 examples of correspondence that you have written on your own so it has your voice, okay? Then you save that as a reference document and you keep that updated and you attach it to this project or this conversation. Then you build the pieces, a welcome sequence of 3 or 4 emails that go out on a schedule, an intake questionnaire that pulls exactly what you need to start work, which cuts out the back and forth, a kickoff call agenda, a project timeline template, a first draft proposal generator where you paste in the notes from a discovery call and you get back a proposal in your format and then you edit it. You can also build the front end of this. When somebody sends like an inbound question about your services, you paste it in and you get back a first draft response that pulls from your reference document. So the pricing is right and the terms are right and the voice sounds like you. Now you still read it and send it yourself. You just stop writing it from scratch every single time and it's still personalized to that potential client. So the setup on this is going to take a little bit longer depending on what you have for onboarding currently. So, maybe 2 or 3 hours to assemble the reference document, that's about right. And then maybe more time to build the actual assets. But then it runs. And not only have you saved a heap of time every single time you bring a new client in, but again, things stop falling through the cracks. And you're no longer worried that things are falling through the cracks and you missed a step with a new client or a potential client, right? You know, you set up the system to do the lifting for you. And that peace of mind alone is worth all of the time it takes to set this up. The fourth system you could set up would be a marketing campaign build with a campaign autopsy at the end. So this one has sort of two halves to it. And the second half is the one that most people don't think about because they're usually on to like the next thing already. The campaign build starts with one document that describes your offer completely. What it is, who it's for, what the problem is that it solves, what it costs, what the objections are, what the deadline is, and where your audience lives. Then you ask AI to build the full campaign around it. So the sequence and timing, the email flow, the content pieces, the offer page structure, the objection handling. You get a complete plan in a single afternoon instead of spending an entire week or more on it yourself. And then you just rewrite it into your voice. Never accept the initial output, please. Okay. Always make sure that you are rewriting this in your own voice. Now, at the end, the campaign autopsy is where the money is. So when a marketing campaign ends, most of us kind of look at the total revenue and we feel however we're going to feel about it and we move on, right? You might dissect what you think went well and what you maybe you assume didn't. Instead, export your numbers, your email opens and the clicks by send, page views, conversions, ad spend if you ran ads. Hand it over to the AI tool and ask what worked, what didn't, which piece did the heaviest lifting, where the biggest drop off happened between steps, and what you should maybe stop doing next time. Ask it to compare this campaign against the last one you ran, if that applies, right? Do that 3 times, and you will stop rebuilding campaigns from scratch because you will have real evidence about what works for your specific audience. And then you can repeat the good stuff and keep tweaking what needs help instead of reinventing your marketing all over again. The fifth system would be a decision brief. And we talked last week about decision fatigue. This is sort of the direct answer to a big chunk of that. Whenever you are facing a real business decision, and I mean something like, all right, which scheduling platform should you move to? Or should you raise your prices? Or whether a contractor makes sense at whatever your current revenue level is. Or maybe you're trying to figure out how other people in your industry structure their retainers, okay? What I want you to do is to ask your AI model for a decision brief rather than an answer. So the standing instruction could go something like this. Here is my situation and my constraints, which are my revenue, my time, my budget, and my technical comfort level. Research the options. Give me the 3 to 5 that best fit a business my size. For each one, give me what it costs, what it does well, where it falls short, and what it would take for me to switch. Tell me what I would be giving up with each choice. Show me your sources. And then tell me what you would need to know about my business to narrow it further. So what you get back when you approach it like this is a 2-page brief instead of 11 open tabs across your internet browser and a screaming headache. You still make the decision. You just have all of the information and the trade-offs laid out right in front of you. So now you can make that decision in 20 minutes without the headache. Think of AI as an assistant, not a manager. You don't hand the decisions off to it. You ask it to give you all of the options so you can make the decision yourself. But the work is gathering all that information and laying out those options in some semblance of order that makes it easy for you to understand. That's what the assistant does. You make the decision, right? So those are five, you know, options for building out systems in your business with AI. Notice what each of those has in common. Every single one of them does take some real setup effort. Every one of them handles work that was necessary but unpaid. And every one of them gives you back the hours that you should be spending on the work that only you can do, which is the client in front of you, the thing that you make, the service you deliver, the conversation that turns into a sale, okay? Now, here is the part where I put a gentle hand on your shoulder and I just give it a little squeeze. Everything that I just gave you produces an output. And output with AI has a quality problem that is very easy to miss because AI writes with total confidence whether it is right or completely wrong. Okay, the tone never changes. The format is always really clean. The paragraphs always sound very professional. It reads like competence, and our brains fall for it every single time. So here is my second very strong opinion. If you cannot roughly evaluate the thing that you are asking for, then you shouldn't be shipping it. Okay? You cannot judge output that you do not understand. If you have no standard in your head, whatever comes back from the AI becomes the standard. So if you ask AI for a marketing campaign for your product launch and it gives you 11 emails, a landing page outline, and a content calendar, oh, that all looks great. It's organized and it's confident and it's very, very thorough. But if you do not have a basic understanding of how marketing works, you have no way of knowing that the sequence it gave you has no urgency built into the last 3 days, that the offer page leads with features when your buyers care about the specific outcome, or that it's pointing you at a platform where your buyers aren't spending any time. You'll send it, and when it underperforms, you will conclude that that type of marketing does not work for your business. When it really what happened is that you had no way to catch that there was a problem with the plan. Same thing goes with the presentation. If you don't know what a good pitch looks like in your industry, then you'll accept 40 slides of very dense bullet points because it came back organized and it sounded smart. Same with a contract clause or a pricing model or even a basic flyer. Same with a financial analysis, which is the scariest one on this list because the numbers will be formatted beautifully, whether the logic underneath them holds up or not. And this is not about being tech savvy, okay? Researchers have been studying this exact pattern since long before any of us had a chatbot. It is called automation bias. Okay, automation bias is the human tendency to over-rely on automated processes, favoring their suggestions over our own judgment, even when the output from that automation is wrong. When a system gives us an answer, we just tend to accept it and we stop looking for errors. And we do it more the more competent that the system seems to be. So they've been studying this, like there were studies back as far as 1997 that mapped out a whole territory of how people misuse and overtrust automated systems. And this was well before AI was a thing. There was an even older piece of this from Lizanne Bainbridge, who wrote way back in 1983 about which she called the ironies of automation. So the observation was that when you automate a task, the human is left responsible for catching the failures of a process that they no longer perform. So now back then, the processes that she was talking about were control systems in industrial and process environments. So like chemical plants and flight deck automation and aviation. I mean, that's important stuff. But the same principles apply to AI. That is the exact position that you are in when you automate a business process that you never understood in the first place, whether that's creating a flyer that will attract attention to your business or writing a contract for a new business partnership. And the research on AI specifically backs this up. There was a large field study run with the Boston Consulting Group. And there were researchers that found that on tasks that were done like inside what AI does well, right? People performed significantly better with it. But on tasks that were just outside of what AI does really well, the people who were using AI performed worse than the ones who were not because they accepted plausible looking answers that were absolutely wrong. The people who did best in that scenario were the ones who knew enough to tell the difference, okay? And that is what I'm driving at. We have to know enough to tell the difference. But how much do you really need to know? Well, it's probably less than you think. I'm not telling you to go get a marketing degree before you touch a campaign or take a graphic design classes before you have AI create a flyer for you. You need to know enough to be a competent reviewer. And that is a much lower bar than being able to produce the thing yourself. So before you ask for something, you should be able to name like 3 or 4 things that separate a good version of that output from a bad one. So for a sales email, you might say that a good one leads with the reader's problem, makes one clear ask, sounds like a human, and has a specific next step, that call to action that we look for, right? You don't have to be a copywriter to know that. But if you cannot name those 3 or 4 things, then you're not ready to judge what comes back. But the beautiful part about this is you can build that standard with the same dang tool. Before you ask AI to make the thing, ask it to teach you the criteria, okay? So the first step would be ask for the criteria. Something like, what separates an effective launch email sequence from an ineffective one for a service business selling to other small business owners? Give me the criteria that experienced marketers use to evaluate one. Boom, okay? But when we take it a step further with step 2, ask for the sources. What are the most respected books, studies, and practitioners on this specific topic? Then ask it to summarize the core arguments of 2 or 3 of them so you can learn the thinking more quickly. If it's something with real stakes, go read that resource yourself. The third step would be turn the criteria into a checklist. Ask it to build you a scorecard with 7 to 10 yes or no questions that you can run against any draft. You're going to save this because that becomes a permanent asset. And then the final step would be now ask for the thing. And when it comes back, run your own checklist against it before anything else happens. And then ask it to critique its own draft against your criteria, which is surprisingly useful and actually will often find something that you would have missed. This probably takes about 20 minutes on the front end. And again, it's something that you can use over and over again. And you come out of it knowing something that you didn't know before, which is a byproduct that I love. I am forever a student of things. So you're getting smarter about your business while you're getting your time back. So whatever comes back, run these 3 questions on it before it goes anywhere near a customer, okay? Number 1, is it true? Every number, date, statistic, citation, name, claim, it all gets verified. These AI tools invent things that sound entirely reasonable. So you need to verify anything that you would be embarrassed to be wrong about. Number 2, is it mine? Does it sound like a person who runs your business? Or does it sound like a very polished consultant or even a stranger, right? Your customers can tell. And sounding generic is the fastest way to sound like everybody else in your market, okay? The third question, is it right for my industry and my customer. So this is where the criteria that you built comes in. Generic best practices are not the same as what works for a candle maker in a small town, or a bookkeeper serving construction companies, or a coach who sells to solo consultants. You know your people. The tool does not. Well, at least not yet anyway. So if it clears all three of those questions, ship it. If it doesn't, tell the tool specifically what it missed and ask again. Now that back and forth, that is now the work, but that is much better and much faster work than doing it all from scratch. So AI earns its keep in a tiny business when it takes over necessary work that never generated revenue, which frees your hours for the work only you can do. I gave you 5 systems that are worth your setup time, but there are plenty of others out there that you could do specifically for your particular business and your particular needs. So explore some of that. Every one of them, though, follows the same pattern. Gather the context, write a standing instruction that you save and reuse, and define the output format so it comes back the same way every single time. Please remember, confident output is not the same as correct output, okay? And that automation bias is a well-documented pattern that catches a lot of people off guard. So what we used to say in journalism was, if your mother says she loves you, check the source, okay? Just do that with your AI. Before you ask for something, you should be able to name 3 or 4 things that make a good version good. Use AI to build that standard, and then use the checklist to judge what AI brings back to you. And then run those 3 questions on everything that it produces. Is it true? Is it mine? Is it right for my industry and my customer? All right, thanks for spending this time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a solid and leave a 5-star review on whichever platform that you're listening on. And while you're at it, give me a follow or subscribe if you are on YouTube. Now, go build a system in AI that will truly give you some time back. Remember, you've got this, and I am cheering you on. I'll see you next week.